Hello everyone, welcome to another session on UPSC Mains previous questions analysis. In this session we'll be discussing about General Studies paper 3 from the year 2013. This is part 2 where we'll be discussing from question 16 to the last 25th. If you have missed the part 1, please go back and watch part 1 and come back to this video. Now let us get into the question number 16. Now it is a two-part question. 16a. The question is, what is a digital signature? What does it authenticate? Meaning, what does its authentication mean? Give various salient built-in features of a digital signature. Now, so to give you an explanation, there are three keywords in this answer. First, you have to define what a digital signature is in the first place. Second thing is, how or what does it authentication mean? Since we are moving towards an e-office scenario, it may not be possible for officers to sign the documents physically. So in that lieu of physical paper document or a physical paper trail, digital signature becomes the go-to solution to authenticate and attest government documents, whether it may be a proof of residence, whether it may be an office file, whatever it may be. The only way that you can attest these kinds of documents is through digital signature. You have to explain that, and again you have to give various advantages of using such kinds of digital ecosystems, where you have to incorporate the idea of crypto and all that thing, where you have to keep in mind the advantages of using such technology in authenticating documents and tamper proofing those documents. Now moving on to the next part of the same question, 16b. How does the 3D printing technology work? List out the advantages and disadvantages of the technology. Again, you have to define what 3D technology is. Simply remember, 3D technology means additive manufacturing. You have to remember that word. It's very important when you are talking about 3D printing. 3D printing is an additive process. That is the keyword that you have to remember. Then again you list out the advantages. What are the disadvantages? See, that advantages are in terms of increasing efficiency, increasing quality. The disadvantages are automation. As a result of it, there might be a large scale job loss, because instead of allocating 5 or 6 individuals, humans to perform a job, company can simply buy a machine 3D printer and put it up to the task, and it will take care of the rest of the manufacturing process. So in that terms, it talks about the advantages and disadvantages. Now moving on to question number 17, again a two-part question. In the first instance, 17a, what is an FRP composite material? How are they manufactured? Discuss their applications in aviation and automobile industries. So FRP is nothing but fiber reinforced plastic or polymer. So it is a composite material. You explain the science that kind of goes into this. For example, the best way is carbon fiber, where they mix carbon with strands of fiberglass. That is how you get carbon fiber. That is the most and strongest known polymer, fiber reinforced polymer or composite material that is known to mankind, We use it in everything. We use it in aircrafts, we use it in automobiles. A little bit costly, but nonetheless they are very strong. Their tensile strength is high and their weight is very low. Instead of using steel, you can use or you can replace steel with carbon fiber, and it can take that kinds of pressure, and in some cases even more than what conventional steel reinforcement can hold up to. So again you explain that process. Then you talk about the manufacturing process of composite materials, particularly fiber reinforced polymers or plastics. Then you talk about applications in aviation and automobile industry. The important aspect in both of those industries is structural strength while maintaining the low weight requirements in both of those industries. Now moving on to the second part of the same question, that is 17b. What do you understand by run-of-river hydroelectricity project? How is it different from in other hydroelectricity project? First, they are talking about hydroelectricity projects, but instead of clubbing all the types of generation of hydroelectricity projects, they are specifically pointing out run-of-river hydroelectricity project. So you explain run-of-river hydroelectricity project. right? Because in this scenario it is unique because it doesn't need water storage in the first place. There is no storage of water in these types of hydroelectricity projects. That is how they are different from conventional hydroelectric projects, where a dam is built and the water is retained, and then water is run through pipes and through turbines through which electricity is generated. So that is how you should write this answer and conclude this answer by explaining the basic difference between a run-off river hydroelectricity project and a conventional or any other type of hydroelectricity project. Now moving on to question 18, it is simple. How important are vulnerability and risk assessment for pre-disaster management? As an administrator, what are the key areas that you would focus on in a disaster management system? Again, 200 words, 10 marks. You have to point out the key areas that they are asking in this question. First, they are asking about vulnerability and risk assessment. Not only that, they are asking what would be your focus as an administrator in cases of in a disaster management scenario or a system. So these are the areas, these are the 2 points. One, you have to think about the vulnerability, and not only that, you have to also factor in the risk assessment. First you study the vulnerability, then you calculate the risk assessment, then as an administrator you have to come up with solutions so that you can focus on either preventing or addressing or containing the disaster in a scenario, in a disastrous scenario. That is what they are asking you for your answer in this question. Now moving on to question number 19. So what are the consequences of illegal mining? Discuss the Ministry of Environment and Forest concept of go and no-go zones for coal mining sector. So this answer is directly asking about the concept of illegal mining and legalized coal mining. So you have to define what is illegal mining. You have to elaborate on the disadvantages of illegal mining. Not only that, you also have to explain the concept of go and no-go zones for coal mining sector. So these are the two things that you have to concentrate and answer in this question. Coming to question number 20, this talks about enumerate, right, as a national water policy of India. So the question is, enumerate the national water policy of India, taking river Ganges as an example. Discuss the strategies which may be adopted for river water pollution control and management. What are the legal provisions of management and handling of hazardous waste in India? So what are the key areas of focus here where you have to kind of point out an answer? The key answer is national water policy of our country. How the national water policy of the country is trying to manage and control water pollution in our country. What do you mean by hazardous waste? What are the primary sources of hazardous waste? And when you take the river Ganges, that is river Ganga, what are the strategies? What are the government program? Namami Ganga program, right? You have river Ganga project, right? So you have to elaborate the strategies adopted by the government of India to address this pollution control in water. So that is how you say at the center of it, river Ganga is there. On one end, you have to talk about the strategies adopted by the government of India, the programs, the schemes, the policies. In the second, you have to talk about what national water policy of India says about pollution control and hazardous waste management, and that is how you conclude your answer. If possible, try to give an example of current status, right? You give a status update. Currently, Ganga is not clean, but compared to earlier periods, compared to earlier pollution levels, due to construction of large scale water treatment plant or sewage treatment plants or waste treatment plants, the amount of pollution that is getting added into river Ganga through drainages, through very multiple of hazardous sources, slowly the contamination level of Ganga is going down. That is kind of an update that you can give when you are concluding the answer. Now moving on to next question. Coming to question number 21. Money laundering poses a serious security threat to country's economic sovereignty. What is its significance for India, and what steps are required to be taken taken to control this menace. Again, two things. Remember, they are talking about the economic sovereignty. Define what economic sovereignty is and how does money laundering undermine the economic sovereignty of our country. Not only that, you also give a status update. What are the current anti-money laundering laws in our country? Try to explain, are they adequate? If not, what should be the way forward, and try to regain or retain our economic sovereignty in terms of money laundering or economic offenses. So coming back to the question number 22, what are social networking sites and what security implications do these sites present 200 words. This is an important question. In the current scenario, this question is kind of significant, but it was asked in 2013. But nonetheless, the key points are, you have to define what social networking sites are. Number two, you have to consider and give out examples, specific and unique examples as to how security of a state or security of an individual. Remember, this is not only about the country, it is also about individual safety also. You have to give suitable individual unique examples of security implications to not only the country but also to its citizenry on an individual levels, both from external sources and also from internal sources. Because if one person does not like the other, there is a greater chance that they might use social media to threaten the other person on privacy or any other matter. So it's not only about the construct of the state, it is also about individual security, both from external threats and also internal threats. From that perspective, you have to give beautiful examples in that regard. Now moving on to question number 23. Cyber warfare is considered by some defense analysts to be a larger threat than even Al-Qaeda or terrorism. What do you understand by cyber warfare? Outline the cyber threats which India is vulnerable to and bring out the state of current state of the country's preparedness to deal with the same. First, define cyber warfare, and now you talk about how cyber warfare is different from conventional terrorism. Remember the word. Al-Qaeda and current forms of terrorism are conventional forms of terrorism. Cyber terrorism is an entirely other domain but comes under the banner of terrorism. So nonetheless, first you define what cyber terrorism is or cyber warfare is, then you define and differentiate what conventional terrorism such as or threats posed by Al-Qaeda or other such organizations is different to cyber warfare. And now you talk about India's preparedness. What are the SETI? We have SETI, SETI, right? As CERT-IN, sorry, not SETI, CERT-IN, CERT-IN, our nodal agency to counter and prevent and detect cyber threats emanating from other countries or other non-state actors. So you give that as an example, and then you say that is not adequate, we need to do more, and that should be your answer, and your answer should conclude with a possible and an implementable. Remember, you cannot compete with the American way of security systems. You have to think about our domestic availability of security also, technology also. So from that, a realistic solution should be suggested. Now moving on to question number 24. Article 244 of the Indian Constitution relates to administration of scheduled areas and tribal areas. Analyze the impact of non-implementation of the provisions of the 5th schedule on growth of left-wing extremism. First, remember, what you have to talk about is you have to discuss the provisions that are laid down in Article 244 and the reason or the basis for which these provisions were laid into or were attached to Article 244. Second thing is, you have to talk about scheduled areas through the lens of 5th schedule. Then you talk about what left-wing extremism is and how left-wing extremism has found a footing in these scheduled areas and scheduled tribal zones, because these sections of Article 244 and the 5th schedule are not being implemented in a proper or in the meaning or the way that they were intended to be implemented in the first place. That is how you answer this question. Now moving on to question 25. How far are India's internal security challenges linked with border management, particularly in the view of long porous border with most countries of South Asia and Myanmar? First you talk about the impact of these kinds of porous borders that has on India. Then you talk about the threats of such porous borders on our internal security, and finally you conclude by giving examples in terms of Myanmar, in terms of northeastern extremism, and not only that, you also talk about Pakistan, because at the end of the day the border with Pakistan is also porous to extent, and that is how you compare from the both sides. You have to give examples will fetch you marks in these kinds of questions. So if you have liked the video, please like the video, please share this video with your friends and family, please subscribe to the channel, please turn on the notification by clicking the bell icon so that you don't miss any videos that are uploaded in the future. Thanks for watching. Thank you.